What I'd like to do right now is take you on a little journey to a place I'll call Libertarian-Land. In this land, and well, to keep it simple, we'll say we have people who grow their own food and everyone has plenty to eat. But unfortunately, no one can make horseshoes. Remember, we are keeping this simple, so we'll use horses as a means of transportation. So, one of the people growing food, we'll call him gardeners, he decides to teach himself how to make horseshoes and put them on horses in his spare time. But since he is now a blacksmith, he doesn't have time for a garden. So the gardeners tell him they will trade things from their gardens in return for the blacksmith to make shoes for their horses. So now everyone will have something to eat and shoes for their horses. Everything's honky-dory, but along comes government. And they tell the gardeners, well, they have to inspect the blacksmith's horseshoes to make sure they are the correct weight and made of the right grade of metal. Because if one breaks, well, then the rider of that horse, which could be them or a loved one, could be thrown from the horse and even possibly killed. So all government is trying to do is to protect the gardeners from that unscrupulous blacksmith. And in the same way, to play one off the other, the government tells the blacksmith that he needs to inspect the gardener's vegetables to make sure the gardener isn't giving the blacksmith carrots and lettuce that does not meet the quality standards. So both sides tell the government this is ridiculous because everyone knows each other and they wouldn't shortchange the other one. So the government's response to this is, well, what about people you don't know? People who you may trade with from another community. They don't know you, and you don't know them. Therefore, the people from the other community are going to try and rip you off without the government watching them. So the people reply, we won't shortchange each other because we both have an interest in making sure everything is above board. We want to continue to trade with each other, and only through honesty can that happen. Now, the government, being made up of people who neither garden nor blacksmith, well, they have to find a way to earn a living. So they decide to pass a law requiring the inspection of food from the gardener and the inspection of the items the blacksmith produces. And since it has to pay people to do this, it decides to tax everything sold and keep the money to pay for the inspections. Inspections that no one wanted or really needed. And when the people revolt under this system, the government uses the argument that is merely protecting both sides because if bad food was traded to the blacksmith, he might get sick. And if a bad horseshoe was traded to a gardener, well, then he might get thrown from a horse and killed. But by having the government in the mix, it can protect both. Unfortunately, if the majority of the people in the community are not liberty-minded and are deceived by the government's promise of safety and protection, then the community starts to suffer from this infection called governmental interference. The sad fact of the matter is, too many people buy into this, that the government is there to protect them from others when it isn't, and furthermore, it really cannot. If it could, we would never have outbreaks of disease resulting from bad food, or cars that have to be recalled, or toys found to be too dangerous. So, if the government cannot protect us, then what is the answer? Well, protect yourself. Seek out independent testing of items you buy. With the advent of the internet, just about anything you buy, someone else has already had it and written a review. You can trust 50 people telling you something about an item much more so than one faceless and largely unaccountable government agency. Too many people of us have become conditioned to letting the government run everything, and we just sit back and allow it to happen, while our liberties and freedoms are slowly taken from us in the name of safety and security. And if you want to allow it to happen during peacetime, then the government will just start a never-ending war against an adversary who is amorphous and vaguely defined. Let's call it a nice sounding name like, I'll just pull this one out of a hat. How about a war on terror? And unlike a war on Japan or a war on Germany, this war is not defined. And we can call whoever we want an enemy and thus perpetuate it for all time. In that way, the government makes up the rules as it goes along. So if you start asking questions about why you are having your rights violated, you will be told that we are fighting a war. And during war, it is necessary to do things we would not normally do. But hey, rest assured, the government will tell you, as soon as this, what we're calling a war on terror is over, we can all sit back and we'll enjoy our freedom and our liberties again. Unfortunately, this, quote, war will never be over. I mean, how can it be? We have a continually changing definition of what it constitutes and who we are fighting against. So I guess if we allow it to, the government will just assume the new normal is a state of war against people who don't like us, of which, we will never run out, since we aren't going to run out of people not liking us. That's just how it is in the world. So since we're not going to run out of people not liking us, we won't run out of war. Since we're not running out of war, we're not going to run out of restrictions on our liberties and freedoms in the name of that war. This is a big reason why this war on terror is just handmade for the government, because they can sit out there and define whoever they want as an enemy. And if you read through a lot of the legislation that gets passed, that's largely up to whoever the president says is an enemy. If he decides you're an enemy and you're what we call a domestic terrorist, then guess what? You'll soon, you won't even know. The FBI can write a search warrant, not get a judge's approval, come in, search your house, and not tell you a word about it. In this way, the government just continually saps away your freedoms and liberties without ever having a time on the horizon when you're going to get them back, because we'll never be done with this war on terror. Anyway, we're coming up on the last segment of the show. Boy, this show just flies by. So, anyway, this is Patrick Riggins with the Patrick Riggins Show. We'll be back with the last segment, and we'll try to cram as much as we can in before the end of the show. Join us here in a couple of minutes.